Our story starts in Shellstown, where pirates from the Baroque Works organization launch a massive attack on Marine Base 153, which protects the soldiers of the East Blue. There are 3 pirates involved in the attack, but the most important one among them is Miss Sunday, mainly because she has a very strange power. She can control the line of soldiers standing in front of her by suddenly making a third arm appear on each of their bodies. Because of that ability, the soldiers end up attacking each other while she simply stands there watching everything happen. In the end, they basically eliminate themselves while she does nothing but observe. We later learn that the reason behind all this chaos is that they came to retrieve the body of Mr. Seven, who was one of the members of their organization. But once they find out that Zoro was the one responsible for his death, a completely new goal appears for them. Now they want to track down Luffy and his crew, eliminate all of them, and take revenge for their fallen teammate, including Zoro himself. Meanwhile, back on Luffy's ship, we see Usopp, Sanji, and Nami thinking about what their next move should be in order to reach the Grand Line while avoiding as many dangers as possible. Sanji suggests that they stop at Logtown first, when he notices that they are not very excited about the idea. Mainly because the city is full of marine soldiers who absolutely hate pirates, he starts trying to convince them in other ways. For example, he points out that someone like Nami probably needs to go shopping and buy new things for herself. On top of that, the kitchen on the ship is completely empty, and there is almost nothing left to eat. That basically means that even if they manage to avoid getting arrested by the Marines, they might end up dying from hunger instead. Although Nami clearly weakens when she hears the word shopping, Usopp is still terrified of the danger. Because of that, he runs to Zoro to warn him and ask for his opinion about the plan. However, Zoro surprisingly says that he actually thinks it is a great idea, mainly because he needs to buy a new sword anyway. At first, the only person who disagrees with the plan is Luffy. He wants to continue moving forward and reach the Grand Line as quickly as possible so he can start searching for the legendary One Piece treasure. But Nami quickly finds his weak point. She reminds him that Logtown is the city where his idol, the pirate Gold Roger, was executed. Roger is the man who inspired Luffy to become a pirate in the first place, and he is also the one who started the legend of the One Piece treasure. The moment Luffy hears that, his eyes immediately start sparkling, and without thinking twice, he says that they absolutely have to go there right now. After that, the story takes us back in time to Logtown on the day of Gold Roger's execution. Before Roger steps onto the execution platform in front of the crowd, we see Vice Admiral Garp arriving to speak with him one last time. Garp starts teasing him a little and asks how it feels to be the Pirate King now that he was the one who personally captured him and brought his era to an end. Even though they clearly stand on opposite sides and follow completely different beliefs, the many years of chasing and fighting each other have created a strange kind of respect and trust between them. Because of that, Roger tells Garp that he trusts him and wants to ask him for one final favor. Roger reveals that he has a son, and he asks Garp to take care of the boy. He explains that the child is completely innocent and should not have to carry the burden of his father's crimes. Roger then says that while his own era is coming to an end, the dawn of his son's era is only just beginning. At this moment, we learn that the boy he is talking about is actually Luffy. As soon as Luffy finally arrives in Logtown, he becomes extremely excited because he wants to see the execution platform with his own eyes. However, Nami tries to calm him down a little because they still have many important supplies they need to buy first. She decides to leave Luffy with Sanji so the two of them can head toward the market, while she goes off to finish her shopping. While they are still discussing where they should meet after they finish everything, we see someone dressed completely in black standing in the distance and watching them carefully without being noticed. At the same time, over at the harbor, Marine Captain Smoker is feeling very satisfied with himself because he has just managed to arrest Cozy from the Yes Pirates. As for Zoro, he separates from the rest of the group and continues walking through the city on his own so he can buy the things he needs. By pure coincidence, while he is walking down the street, he accidentally bumps into a girl, which causes her to trip and fall to the ground. When she stands up and Zoro finally gets a good look at her face, he is completely shocked. She looks exactly like Quina, the girl he used to train with when he was younger and who tragically passed away. The resemblance between them is so strong that Zoro becomes extremely uncomfortable and quickly walks away without saying much. Not long after that, he enters the first sword shop he finds and places all the money he currently has on the table so he can see what kind of sword he can afford. At that moment, the shop owner's full attention immediately shifts to the sword Zoro is carrying. He politely asks if he can take a closer look at it. You can clearly see the amazement on his face, but he tries his best to hide it because he wants to buy the sword from Zoro at the lowest price possible. When he realizes that Zoro has no intention of selling it, he suddenly makes a very surprising offer. He tells Zoro that he can take anything he wants from the shop, along with an extra 750,000 if he is willing to give him that sword. Right at that moment, the girl Zoro bumped into earlier suddenly walks into the shop as well, looking extremely excited. She asks if the sword Zoro is holding is actually one of the greatest swords in history. We then learn that her name is Tashigi, and one of her biggest passions is studying famous swords and learning everything she can about them. While she and the shop owner continue admiring the sword, Zoro's attention shifts to a completely different blade inside the shop. His eyes lock onto the Kitetsu sword. This sword has a terrifying reputation among swordsmen, because it is said to carry a powerful curse that brings misfortune to anyone who uses it. The curse is so feared that even the shop owner himself is afraid to get rid of the sword, worried that the curse might end up falling on him instead. That legendary story only makes Zoro want the sword even more, so he decides to put it to a simple test and see whether the curse will kill him, or if the blade will accept him as its master. He stretches his arm out and tosses the sword high into the air, calmly waiting to see if it will come crashing down and slice straight through him. But in a shocking twist, the blade spins rapidly and lands just an inch away from his arm without leaving even the smallest scratch. Zoro immediately smiles with pride, convinced that the sword has chosen him. Meanwhile, Nami is still completely absorbed in her shopping spree. Coincidentally, a green-haired guy brushes past her, pretending to bump into her so he can try to pick her pocket. But Nami is a seasoned professional when it comes to this kind of thing. She calls him out instantly, revealing that she already stole his wallet before he even had the chance to try anything. She even gives him some friendly advice. If he wants to become a real thief, he needs to find someone distracted, get close enough to make them feel comfortable, and then betray them at the perfect moment to take whatever he wants. Completely offended, the amateur thief storms away in frustration. Back at the sword shop, the owner is absolutely blown away by Zoro's passion and skill. Because of that, he decides to do something incredibly generous and gives him a priceless sword that has been in his family for generations. It is a beautiful Japanese katana with a sleek black lacquered finish. And on top of that, he gives it to him completely free, admitting that it has been a very long time since he last met a swordsman worthy of such respect. As the day slowly winds down, Luffy is running around the city asking everyone he meets for directions to the execution platform. Unfortunately, nobody seems to pay him any attention, and that is when he runs into the same green-haired thief Nami embarrassed earlier. It turns out there may be no one on Earth more distracted than Luffy. The thief smirks and tells him, "You are looking for the platform, right? What a coincidence. I am heading there too." When Luffy finally arrives, he stands in front of the platform, deeply moved. He reminds himself that every place he has traveled to and everything he has done all began right here. Standing there only strengthens his determination to keep chasing his dream. Just as the green-haired thief is about to betray him and make his move, he suddenly loses the opportunity. Luffy's famous straw hat suddenly flies off his head. When he turns around to see who took it, he finds Buggy, the pirate he humiliated before. Buggy is absolutely furious and yells, "For the record, my name is Buggy. Are you seriously still this annoying?" Luffy looks genuinely confused, wondering how Buggy even managed to find him in such a crowded city. Buggy explains that it was obvious. All Luffy ever talks about is Gold Roger and how badly he wants to find the legendary One Piece treasure. Of course, he would stop here first to pay his respects before continuing his journey. But unfortunately for you, Buggy sneers, your journey ends right here. Your story is going to end exactly the same way his did. This time, Buggy has come prepared. He even brought along another enemy of our hero, the pirate Alvida. She still holds a serious grudge after the time Luffy single-handedly destroyed her ship. Luffy thinks he can defeat them easily thanks to his rubber body and strange powers. But there is one thing he did not expect. Alvida has eaten a devil fruit as well, and she now has powers of her own that allow her body to slip away from any attack. Meanwhile, the rest of the crew finally meet up at their agreed-upon spot, ready to head back to the ship and set sail. But when they realize Luffy is nowhere to be found, they immediately know he must have gotten himself into serious trouble again. Without wasting a second, they begin searching the entire city to find him. Buggy decides to have a little fun before finishing Luffy off. He chains him down with special iron cuffs that completely drain the power from his body. Then he even starts gathering a crowd, planning to tell his dramatic life story and turn the moment into a grand historical event. But before he can even finish his speech, Luffy's friends finally arrive. Buggy orders Alvida and his crew to hold them off while he grabs Luffy and climbs straight to the top of the execution platform. He is determined to end Luffy's life right there, forcing him to experience the same final moment as his idol. But Luffy shows absolutely no fear. Standing there face to face with death, he confidently shouts, "I am Monkey D. Luffy, and I am going to find the One Piece and become the king of the pirates." Then he bursts out laughing with pure, fearless confidence. By coincidence, Captain Smoker happens to be nearby, watching the entire situation unfold from a distance. At first, he planned to let the pirates deal with each other before stepping in, but the moment he sees Luffy laughing, both he and Buggy say at the exact same time, "He looks just like Gold Roger." Suddenly, a massive bolt of lightning crashes down onto the platform and strikes Buggy, setting the entire structure on fire. A moment later, Luffy walks out of the burning wreckage completely unharmed, without a single scratch on him. The crew quickly realizes they need to take advantage of the chaos and get back to the ship immediately. If they stay any longer, the Marines will trap them inside the city, And that is exactly what starts to happen. Tashigi suddenly attacks Zoro, revealing that she is actually Captain Smoker's second-in-command. She tells Zoro that a pirate like him does not deserve to carry such a legendary sword. She challenges him in a fierce battle, determined to arrest him on the spot, but Zoro proves to be far stronger than she expected. Even though he defeats her easily, he refuses to hurt her and simply walks away, leaving her behind. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, Smoker confronts Luffy directly, determined to capture him once and for all. He has no intention of allowing the era of Gold Roger to rise again. Not only is Smoker incredibly strong, but he also possesses a terrifying ability. His power allows him to transform his entire body into pure smoke. Because of that, no physical attack can leave a mark on him, so he easily overpowers Luffy, pinning him down without breaking a sweat. Leaning closer, he coldly tells him that his luck has finally run out. But just as Smoker is about to end Luffy's life, a mysterious third figure dressed entirely in black suddenly steps out of the shadows. And without hesitation, the stranger grabs Smoker's arm, stopping him dead in his tracks. He looks straight at the captain and calmly asks, "I wonder whose luck has actually run out today." He then tells Smoker to let the boy continue his journey, hinting that Luffy might be the one who will finally find the answer the entire world has been waiting for. With a sudden burst of force, the stranger pulls Luffy away, and the two of them vanish into thin air. When Luffy finally returns to the ship, he is completely confused. He cannot stop wondering who that mysterious savior was and why he risked everything to help him escape. Later that evening, Tashigi heads to a local tavern to grab a drink. She is clearly frustrated after her humiliating defeat against Zoro. But suddenly, Miss Sunday walks in and casually takes a seat right next to her. She leans closer and begins playing mind games. She compliments Tashigi, telling her how strong and beautiful she is, and points out that her true potential is being completely wasted in the Marines. Then she boldly asks, "Why don't you join my crew instead?" She slowly slides her calling card across the table and disappears before Tashigi can even process what just happened. Naturally, Tashigi is left completely bewildered, wondering who this mysterious woman is and how she knows so much about her. But before she can even begin to search for answers, Smoker arrives and joins her at the table. He calmly sits down and admits that he visits this exact tavern every single year on the anniversary of Gold Roger's death. It is his way of reminding himself exactly what he is fighting for. We soon realize that Smoker holds a deep hatred for Roger, mainly because the pirate's dying words changed the entire world forever. Ever since Roger announced the existence of the One Piece treasure, the seas have been flooded with pirates and chaos. Because of that, Smoker has sworn to hunt down every pirate he encounters just to make sure history never repeats itself. Meanwhile, Luffy and his crew finally reach Reverse Mountain. This massive mountain acts as the only entrance to the Grand Line. From this point on, their journey is about to become far more dangerous than anything they have faced before. But Luffy is practically overflowing with excitement. He truly believes that as long as they stay together, they can accomplish anything. But there is one huge problem standing in their way. The powerful currents near the mountain violently pull the ocean in different directions. If they make even the smallest mistake, the swirling waters could easily drag their ship straight to the bottom of the sea. Navigating through this passage requires incredible skill just to keep the ship under control. But Luffy has complete faith in Nami. Without a single moment of doubt, he looks at his navigator and tells her that if she believes this is the right path, then they will face it head-on. And the moment they enter the turbulent passage, they are greeted by a terrifying sight. The water is filled with broken ships, a grim reminder of everyone who failed before them. At the same time, the current proves to be unbelievably powerful. It pushes the ship so violently that they completely lose control. And that is when Luffy quickly uses his rubber abilities. He stretches both of his arms as far as possible and grabs tightly onto the rocky surface of the mountain. Using his own body like an anchor, he manages to pull the ship away from a devastating crash. Despite the panic and chaos, they miraculously succeed in passing through the mountain safely. But before they can even take a moment to celebrate this incredible achievement, they are hit with another horrifying surprise. Waiting right at the end of the watery path is a gigantic whale with its massive mouth wide open, ready to swallow them whole. Without thinking twice, Luffy jumps straight onto the enormous creature, hoping he might somehow reason with it before disaster strikes. But unfortunately, time runs out. The entire ship is violently pulled into the whale's massive mouth. A short time later, Luffy wakes up lying on a small shoreline. The moment he opens his eyes, he looks out toward the ocean and sees the enormous whale repeatedly slamming its head against the rocky mountain for no clear reason. He immediately stretches his arms out, trying desperately to reach the creature and stop it from hurting itself. But the distance between them is simply too great. His desperate plan fails. Suddenly, an old man appears out of nowhere. Looking at Luffy, he sarcastically asks if a tiny kid like him really believes he can stand up to a gigantic beast like that. He calmly steps forward and tells Luffy to step aside and let him handle the situation. Then the old man loads a massive harpoon-sized syringe into a heavy cannon. After carefully aiming, he fires it straight at the raging whale. The moment the enormous needle pierces its thick skin, the creature immediately calms down and slowly sinks back into the water. But this only makes Luffy even more anxious. He yells at the old man, pointing out that calming the beast didn't help him at all. His friends are still trapped deep inside its stomach, and he has to get them out no matter what. So he demands to know who this strange old man is and what exactly is going on with his giant pet. The old man seems surprised that Luffy still believes his friends could be alive inside the creature. Finally, he introduces himself as Crocus and explains that his job is to guard the lighthouse. As for the giant whale, its greatest dream is to cross the red line. Unfortunately, that is impossible because of its enormous size. At that exact moment, the story shifts back to the rest of the crew. Surprisingly, they are still alive, floating on their ship deep inside the dark, echoing stomach of the whale. Meanwhile, outside the whale, Crocus quickly becomes annoyed by Luffy's constant shouting. He simply walks back into his house, slams the door shut, and turns his music up as loud as possible to drown the boy out. But Luffy refuses to be ignored. He keeps banging on the door again and again until the wood finally cracks and splinters right in front of him. He storms inside and fiercely tells the old man that giving up is not an option. He refuses to abandon his friends and declares that his journey cannot continue without them. Eventually, Crocus grows completely exhausted by the boy's relentless determination and finally gives in. He tells Luffy that there is only one possible way to rescue his friends from the stomach of Laboon, which happens to be the name of the massive whale. Meanwhile, far away from the mountain, the scene shifts back to Vice Admiral Garp's office. We see that he has personally summoned Captain Smoker for a private meeting. Garp orders the captain to stop chasing Luffy and leave the boy alone, but Smoker immediately refuses. He explains that if Garp had seen the boy laughing on the execution platform, he would understand that Luffy is almost a perfect copy of Gold Roger. He then boldly accuses Garp of protecting the pirate simply because Luffy is his own grandson, but Garp actually has very different plans in mind. He believes that Luffy's eventual fate is inevitable anyway, mainly because no human has ever successfully crossed the Grand Line and survived. However, his real reason for letting Luffy go is something far bigger. The Kingdom of Alabasta is currently on the verge of a devastating civil war, and on top of that, their beloved princess has mysteriously disappeared, which likely means she has been kidnapped. But even that is not the biggest problem. A massive revolutionary uprising is beginning to threaten the military forces themselves. So if things continue like this, if you truly want to complete your mission, you need to stay focused on your absolute priorities. Meanwhile, deep inside the whale, Nami frantically reviews her maps. She desperately hopes to figure out exactly where they are and find a way out, but suddenly she realizes her compass is completely gone. Before she can even react, a blue-haired woman appears out of nowhere and violently attacks her. The mysterious woman proves to be far stronger than Nami, but luck is finally on her side as the rest of the crew arrives just in time to save her. Back on the outside, Crocus finally loses his patience with Luffy's endless questions. So he decides to sit down and tell him the entire story from the very beginning. The story takes us back several years. One day, Crocus was out sailing on his ship to catch some fish. During his trip, he was forced to take a group of pirates on board because their own ship desperately needed some repairs. And that was exactly when Crocus met the giant whale, Laboon, for the very first time. The young whale was deeply attached to the pirate captain, Carol. He absolutely loved the songs the captain would sing all the time. Because of that, Laboon started following the pirate ship absolutely everywhere it went. But the captain and his crew were planning to continue their journey straight into the terrifying Grand Line. So Crocus warned them that Laboon could not possibly go with them. He explained that the seas ahead were completely filled with massive sea monsters and deadly predators. Because of that intense danger, Captain Carol asked Crocus for a massive favor. He begged the old man to take care of Laboon until the crew finished their journey and returned. He simply was not ready to lose his beloved companion that easily. Ever since that day, Crocus has kept his promise and cared for the giant whale, but there is one heartbreaking problem. Laboon simply refuses to accept the fact that the captain and his crew are never coming back. That is exactly why he violently slams his head against the mountain. He desperately hopes he can somehow break through and reach them on the other side. And naturally, the only thing that calms him down is the heavy tranquilizer Crocus injects into him every time he wakes up. Listening to the story, Luffy is deeply moved by the whale's incredible loyalty. He firmly tells Crocus that they need to find a way to help Laboon accept the tragic loss of his friends. But Crocus just looks at Luffy with pure disbelief. He sarcastically thinks to himself that Luffy should probably accept the loss of his own crew first. Meanwhile, deep inside the whale, Zoro makes a surprising discovery. He realizes that the blue-haired woman they captured is not alone. She actually has a male partner with her, and both of them belong to the notorious Baroque Works organization. At that exact moment, the scene shifts back to Garp, who is explaining a brand new mission to Captain Smoker. Their main objective is to completely dismantle the Baroque Works organization. We quickly learn that this is considered one of the most dangerous criminal syndicates in the entire world. Their massive influence stretches all the way from the Grand Line to every other sea on the map. At first, they were so weak that the Marines barely paid them any attention, but over time, their power steadily grew in the shadows. And now, their entire focus is firmly set on destroying Marine bases. Smoker is clearly confused by this. He asks Garp what their ultimate goal actually is, but Garp admits that absolutely no one knows yet. The Marines have not managed to capture a single high-ranking member of their crew. On top of that, the organization uses numerical code names to completely hide their true identities. However, they do know that the supreme leader of the syndicate goes by the name Mr. Zero. Suddenly, right in the middle of their conversation, Tashigi bursts into the room. It turns out she had been eavesdropping on their entire discussion from behind the door. By pure coincidence, she spots a wanted poster of Miss Sunday on the desk. She instantly connects the dots, realizing this is the exact same mysterious woman who handed her a calling card and invited her to join her crew. Back inside the whale's stomach, we finally learn the identities of the two Baroque Works agents. The blue-haired woman is known as Miss Wednesday, and her male partner goes by the codename Mr. Nine. Zoro coldly suggests that it would be best to just eliminate them right now and save themselves a lot of future trouble, but Nami strictly refuses. She points out that if Luffy were here, he would never accept them taking another person's life in cold blood. But right in the middle of their argument, Miss Wednesday suddenly shouts a frantic warning. She tells everyone to grab onto something immediately because the giant whale is about to move. And sure enough, Laboon violently breaches the surface of the ocean. The effects of the tranquilizer have completely worn off, so he instantly resumes smashing his massive head against the mountain wall. Seeing this, Crocus rushes over to inject him again before the creature causes himself any fatal injuries. But this time, Luffy decides to try a completely different approach. He stands as close to the raging whale as possible and starts singing loudly. He sings the exact same song that Captain Carroll used to sing, desperately hoping to get through to him. And miraculously, the familiar melody deeply affects Laboon. The giant creature stops his rampage, and tears actually begin to well up in his enormous eyes. Luffy takes this emotional moment to speak to him. He tries to make the whale understand that the people we love cannot always stay by our side forever. He explains that taking new paths can lead us to meet completely different people who will share our journey. Then, he gently asks Laboon to spit his friends out because he truly needs them. Finally, the giant beast softens his stance and agrees. He slowly opens his massive jaws, allowing the entire crew to sail out to safety. To celebrate this incredibly happy reunion, Crocus decides to personally cook a massive feast for the entire crew. During the meal, Luffy discovers that Miss Wednesday actually helped his crew while they were trapped inside the ship, so without hesitating, he decides to let her and her partner travel with them until they reach the next island. He considers it a simple token of gratitude for her unexpected help, but Nami is the one who completely objects to this plan. She nervously asks how they are supposed to reach another island. She confesses that she has entirely lost confidence in her own navigation skills and no longer believes she is capable of guiding them through this deadly ocean. Hearing this, Crocus steps in and offers her a special compass known as a log pose. He explains that this device measures the magnetic fields between the islands. Once they arrive at any island and spend a little time there, the compass will automatically lock on and guide them straight to the next destination. He then reminds Nami that countless experienced sailors never even made it as far as she has. He encourages her to trust her own incredible abilities. Hearing his supportive words, Nami is absolutely thrilled and her fiery passion is instantly reignited. As for Luffy, he grabs some paint and casually draws his crew's iconic pirate symbol right onto Laboon's massive head. He then makes the whale promise to never smash his head against the wall again. He tells Laboon that he is officially one of them now, and because of that, when Luffy finally finishes his grand mission and returns, he wants to see the whale waiting for him completely safe. With a final emotional goodbye, the crew sets sail and continues on their grand journey. Luffy sits across from Miss Wednesday, trying his hardest to talk to her and figure out exactly who she is and what she actually wants, but she completely ignores him. Her entire focus is locked onto a sharp tool resting on the table, desperately hoping she can grab it and cut her bindings without him noticing. Luffy catches on immediately. He casually tells her that she really does not need to go through all that trouble and simply unties her himself. Seizing the unexpected opportunity, she immediately grabs Mr. Nine, and the two of them dive straight into the ocean to escape. Surprisingly, absolutely no one on the crew even cares. Their entire attention is completely captivated by the fact that they have finally arrived at Cactus Island, the very first stop on the Grand Line. But strangely enough, the moment they step foot on the island, the locals welcome them with overwhelming and unjustified joy. Igaram, the mayor of the town, rushes over to greet them. Luffy, completely oblivious to the weirdness of the situation, hugs him as if they have been best friends for years. The mayor then warmly explains that everyone on this island absolutely loves pirates, firmly believing that peace and love are far better than pointless conflict. Meanwhile, Nami is the only one staying focused. Her mind is completely occupied with figuring out exactly when the log pose will lock onto the next magnetic frequency so they can continue their journey. Igaram notices her concern and politely explains that the compass will need at least a full day to calibrate properly. He then strongly insists that the crew stay the night and enjoy a massive welcoming party, and naturally, not a single one of them suspects a thing. In fact, they are absolutely thrilled by the incredible hospitality. At that exact same time, Miss Wednesday and Mr. 9 finally wash up on the shores of the island. She is in a frantic rush to meet Mr. 8 and report that their severe delay was caused by getting swallowed whole by a giant whale. Back at the party, every single member of the crew is celebrating in their own unique way. And for Luffy, there is absolutely no better way to celebrate than by stuffing his face. He gathers every single dessert he can find and happily devours them all. Suddenly, Igaram approaches him with a very specific question. He asks Luffy how a pirate as young as him managed to rack up such an incredibly massive bounty. Happy to share, Luffy starts recounting his entire journey and all his grand achievements from the very beginning. But right in the middle of this pleasant conversation, Miss Wednesday suddenly walks into the room, and that is when the terrifying truth is finally revealed. We learn that she and Igaram have been secretly working together this entire time because both of them are high-ranking members of the Baroque Works organization. In fact, every single person on this island works for the syndicate. Their one and only goal is to lure pirates onto the island, get them completely drunk, eliminate them, and bury them. Taking full advantage of the crew's relaxed state, the agents strike, quickly knocking Luffy completely unconscious. But Nami, who had stayed sharp, finally uncovers the dark truth. She immediately runs to Zoro, desperately hoping they can save the rest of the crew before it is too late, since everyone else is completely drunk and helpless. Without hesitating for a second, Zoro grabs his swords and heads straight back to the tavern. When he arrives, he comes face to face with Mr. 9. The agent smirks and says, "So you are the one who took out Mr. 7. Well, let's see how you handle 100 armed soldiers." But instead of being intimidated, Zoro is absolutely thrilled. He had been dying to test out his brand new swords anyway, so he charges right in, slicing through the soldiers one by one with terrifying precision. When Luffy finally regains consciousness, he is deeply upset. His gut had told him these people were genuinely kind, but unfortunately his instincts were completely wrong. Meanwhile, Igaram grabs Miss Wednesday and the two of them sprint toward a getaway vehicle, desperate to escape the chaos. But Luffy absolutely refuses to let them get away that easily after deceiving his entire crew. He leaps directly onto the speeding vehicle, causing it to violently crash and flip over, sending all three of them tumbling into the dirt. By pure coincidence, Nami happens to be running down that exact same road and rushes over to help Luffy. At that moment, Igaram frantically tries to explain his actions to Luffy. It becomes crystal clear that he and Miss Wednesday are hiding a massive, game-changing secret, but before they can even speak, they are suddenly cut off by the arrival of Mr. 5 and his partner, Miss Valentine. And shockingly, these two top-tier agents have come here specifically to assassinate Miss Wednesday and Igaram, even though they are all supposed to be part of the exact same organization. Realizing they have no other choice, Luffy, Nami, Igaram, and Miss Wednesday are forced to team up just to survive the deadly assault from Valentine and her explosive partner. Meanwhile, on the other side of the town, Zoro successfully takes down the entire army of 100 soldiers, eventually defeating Mr. 9 as well. Back at the crash site, Miss Wednesday finally confesses the absolute truth to Luffy. She reveals that she and Igaram are actually deep-cover spies who infiltrated Baroque Works to gather intelligence and destroy the syndicate from the inside. She desperately explains that there is no time for further details because they need to escape before the rest of the organization hunts them down. But right at that moment, she realizes that Igaram cannot stand up. He is bleeding heavily from a severe wound in his side. She drops to her knees beside him, sobbing uncontrollably and telling him she cannot possibly continue this mission without him. Igaram gently wipes her tears away and turns his full attention to Luffy. He reveals that he is the captain of the royal guard of the Alabasta Kingdom, and the young woman crying beside him is actually Her Royal Highness, the princess. He begs Luffy to safely escort her back to their homeland, explaining that the entire future of the kingdom rests completely on her shoulders. And without a single moment of hesitation, Luffy promises to protect her with his life. Knowing what he has to do, Igaram forces himself up and steps out into the open to distract the approaching assassins, buying Luffy and the princess enough time to run back to the ship. But the ruthless agents immediately throw a massive explosive directly at him, intending to end this little game once and for all. In that exact horrifying moment, Nami tightly pulls Miss Wednesday into a deep hug. She shields her eyes, desperately making sure she does not have to watch her closest friend die right in front of her. The very next day, Wednesday tries her hardest to pull herself together and hold on to her shattered nerves. She takes Igaram's bandana and firmly ties it around her hair, carrying his memory with her. Then she finally drops her disguise and reveals the absolute truth to the crew. She tells them her real name is Vivi, and she is actually the princess of the Alabasta Kingdom. She explains that she infiltrated Baroque Works for one specific reason. She wanted to utterly destroy the organization from the inside because they ruined her people, planted the seeds of hatred among the citizens, and dragged her beloved country into a devastating civil war. But despite all her dangerous espionage, she admits she only managed to uncover a single piece of useful information. The supreme leader of the syndicate goes by the name Mr. Zero. Suddenly, right in the middle of their serious conversation, the air around them is mysteriously filled with falling rose petals. Miss Sunday has somehow boarded their ship completely undetected. We learn that she actually holds the second highest rank in the entire Baroque Works organization, making her one of the most powerful leaders in the syndicate. But surprisingly, she does not come looking for a fight. Instead, she casually offers them a highly tempting deal. She tosses them a special compass, promising that it will guide them straight to the island where the treasure is hidden. She claims this will save them from all the exhaustion and danger waiting for them on their next intended stop, Little Garden. But Luffy knows better than to trust a villain. He is absolutely certain that the hidden cost of her favor will be far worse than any benefit. So without a second thought, he grabs the compass and completely crushes it right in front of her eyes. Miss Sunday does not seem angry at all. She simply smiles, casually wishes them good luck, and jumps straight off the ship into the ocean. Vivi is completely shocked by the situation. She cannot understand how the crew can treat such a massive threat with such terrifying simplicity. She then firmly tells them that once they reach the shores of Little Garden, she will be forced to separate from the crew and go her own way. When they finally arrive safely at the island, they are absolutely mesmerized by the breathtaking scenery surrounding them. Furthermore, they discover incredibly rare and exotic fruits growing everywhere they look. But Nami quickly notices that Usopp has retreated back to the ship. He is completely terrified of the island and refuses to step foot on it. So she asks Vivi to stay close to Luffy and try to keep his reckless behavior under control as much as possible, while she heads back to check on their frightened sniper. When Nami reaches the ship, she tries her best to comfort Usopp. She gently reminds him that the true joy of their grand adventure lies in the journey itself, not just in reaching the final destination. But as it turns out, Usopp had every right to be absolutely terrified. Suddenly, a colossal giant appears towering right in front of them. Before they can even scream, he scoops both of them up in a single massive hand and heads straight toward his cave, seemingly planning to eat them for lunch. Meanwhile, on the other side of the island, Luffy is having the absolute time of his life. He is thrilled to discover that this island is actually filled with living, breathing dinosaurs. Without hesitating, he forcefully grabs Vivi, dragging her onto the massive neck of a dinosaur so they can ride the beast and explore the prehistoric jungle. Elsewhere in the dense forest, Zoro suddenly gets a chilling feeling. He can sense that someone is watching him from the shadows, slowly circling his position. But before he can even figure out what is happening, a strange yellow symbol mysteriously appears directly on his leg. Almost instantly, Zoro loses his balance and his vision blurs. He collapses to the ground, completely losing consciousness and acting as if he were heavily intoxicated. At the same time, Nami is frantically trying everything she can to keep Usopp from having a total panic attack inside the giant's cave. She whispers to him, begging him to use his famous lying skills to distract the giant with his tall tales. She hopes this will buy her enough time to find a way out before they are eaten. But suddenly, the giant simply places a massive plate of food right in front of them. Nami looks up, completely bewildered, and asks, "Wait, aren't you going to eat us?" The giant looks genuinely surprised by the question. He lets out a booming laugh and asks why he would ever eat humans. He explains that he only brought them here so they could share a nice lunch and have a friendly conversation. He then warmly introduces himself, telling them his name is Brogy. Meanwhile, Mr. Five and Miss Valentine finally arrive on the island, but they are greeted by a very angry Mr. 3, who has been waiting for them. He informs them that their previous mission was a catastrophic failure. Then, he delivers a chilling ultimatum. He tells them they must eliminate the giant who has befriended the pirates, or else he will personally execute both of them. While all of this is unfolding, Luffy has managed to meet the island's other resident giant, a massive warrior named Dory. Suddenly, a deafening roar echoes across the island as the central volcano violently erupts. The moment they hear the sound, both Dory and Brogy immediately grab their weapons and prepare for combat. We learn that these two titans are locked in a legendary rivalry. They have been fighting brutal duels against each other for decades, but every single battle ends in a perfect tie. In fact, they have been fighting for so long that they have completely forgotten what started the argument in the first place. Just as Nami prepares to watch this clash of the titans, she gets that same chilling feeling of being watched. Suddenly, the exact same strange symbol that struck Zoro appears on her leg, except this time it is glowing green. The strange magic instantly clouds her mind, making her completely lose focus on her surroundings. Right in the middle of the earth-shattering battle, Usopp notices something terribly wrong. Brogy is clearly struggling, and thick smoke is pouring out of his mouth with every breath. Vivi quickly puts the pieces together. She suggests that someone must have spiked the alcohol Brogy drank right before the duel started, and in that exact moment, she spots Mr. Five and Miss Valentine standing on the sidelines watching the fight with twisted, joyful smiles on their faces. Realizing the horrible truth, Usopp desperately screams out to Dory, begging him to stop the fight, but tragically, he is far too late. Dory delivers a devastating final blow that strikes Brogy down. Standing over his fallen rival, Dory proudly declares himself the ultimate winner of a battle that has lasted for over 100 years. Usopp is absolutely heartbroken and furious. He confronts the victorious giant and reveals the agonizing truth. He tells Dory that this battle was not honorable at all. He explains that the Baroque Works assassins secretly poisoned Brogy's drink, sealing his fate before the fight even began. Tears streaming down his face, Usopp walks over to the fallen Brogy and wraps his arms around the massive warrior. He cries out, promising that he will never, ever forget him, honoring Brogy as the absolute strongest warrior to ever live on the island. But the biggest problem of all is that Luffy has fallen completely under their control as well. He has been marked with a strange drawing right on his face by the assassin known as Miss Golden Week, and because of that cursed mark, he has entirely lost control of his own body and sits there crying like a helpless child. Meanwhile, Vivi finds herself trapped inside a dark room alongside Nami and Zoro, but as soon as she notices the strange symbol painted on Nami's leg, she rushes over and frantically tries to wipe it off. When Nami finally snaps out of the trance and returns to her normal self, Vivi quickly explains the terrifying situation. She reveals that this is the terrifying superpower of the Baroque Works agent, Miss Golden Week. The assassin uses special paints that act exactly like powerful hypnosis. So when the victim's skin absorbs the colors, the paint violently manipulates their emotional state and takes complete control of their mind. And right in the middle of all this chaos, Usopp is the only member of the crew who is still acting normally. He frantically paces around the island, desperately trying to figure out a plan to save everyone. He knows that if he charges into battle alone, he will absolutely lose his life. But if he abandons his friends and runs away, he will lose the only family he has left. So he realizes that his absolute best option is to find someone much stronger to step in and fight for him. That is exactly when he remembers Sanji. We then see the ship's cook still wandering aimlessly through the dense jungle, hoping to reunite with his crew. By pure coincidence, he stumbles upon a bizarre, completely white house hidden deep in the forest. Driven by sheer curiosity, he casually steps inside to investigate. At the exact same time, Mr. 3 finally reveals his own terrifying superpower. He has the ability to effortlessly generate and control massive amounts of solid wax, and because he is absolutely determined to get revenge on the pirate crew, he creates a massive structure shaped exactly like a giant birthday cake. He ruthlessly lines Nami, Zoro, and Vivi up on the cake and begins dropping a steady mist of liquid wax directly onto them. The moment the wax touches their skin, it is designed to slowly freeze them alive until they become permanent statues. And naturally, Mr. 3 stands there watching his twisted masterpiece unfold with a huge, arrogant smile on his face. Meanwhile, Miss Golden Week is treating Luffy exactly like her own personal doll. She playfully tests different colors on his face just to entertain herself while the others suffer. Back at the strange white house, Sanji finally realizes that this luxurious hideout actually belongs to the Baroque Works agents. But right before he decides to leave, a communication snail suddenly starts ringing. Sanji answers it, and the man on the other end is none other than the supreme leader himself, Mr. Zero. Mr. Zero casually announces that he is sending 2 elite soldiers to completely wipe out the remaining pirates on the island. So Sanji immediately prepares himself for the brutal battle that is heading straight toward him. Elsewhere on the island, Usopp has completely lost hope of ever finding Sanji, but fate suddenly opens a brand new door for him. He hears the booming voice of the giant warrior Brogy calling out to him. It turns out that Dory's final strike only caused a superficial wound, meaning the massive giant is actually still alive. Usopp is absolutely thrilled and desperately begs the giant to get up and help him save his friends. But unfortunately, Brogy is completely exhausted and badly wounded from his century-long battle, so the giant looks down at the terrified sniper and offers him some powerful words of encouragement. He tells Usopp that even when he is completely consumed by fear, a true warrior must control his emotions and keep moving forward for the sake of his friends. Meanwhile, Miss Golden Week finally grows bored of playing her twisted games with Luffy, so she mixes all of her paints together and draws a massive black symbol right on his chest. This specific color has a devastating effect, causing Luffy to completely lose all hope in his dreams and his life. She then coldly orders him to walk straight into the ocean and end his own life. But right at that exact moment, Usopp arrives just in time to save his captain from drowning. He quickly pulls Luffy out of the water, and the ocean effortlessly washes all the cursed paint right off his skin. Instantly, Luffy returns to his normal, energetic self, but there is still a massive problem standing in their way. By the time they finally reach their trapped friends, the crew has already been frozen solid, looking exactly like lifeless wax statues. So a brutal battle instantly breaks out between our hero, his sniper, and the ruthless Baroque Works agents. During the chaos, Usopp intentionally provokes Miss Valentine, tricking her into attacking him. He quickly leans his back directly against the giant wax cake. When she strikes with her terrifying physical strength, the massive impact shatters the wax structure completely, and the brilliant plan works perfectly. His friends are instantly freed from their waxy prison. Now the battle is finally fair, shifting into a full-scale team fight against the assassins. By the time Sanji finally arrives at the scene, the fight is already over, and the crew has won a flawless victory. They all return to their ship and bid an emotional farewell to the giant warriors. Then they immediately set sail, determined to safely deliver Princess Vivi to the Alabasta Kingdom. At the end of the long day, the entire crew gathers together to enjoy a massive feast, celebrating their survival. But suddenly, Nami feels a terrifying wave of exhaustion wash over her and violently collapses to the floor. When she finally opens her eyes, she looks incredibly pale and weak. She finds Sanji sitting right beside her bed, watching over her with deep concern. Nami tries to fight through the pain and push herself up, desperately wanting to continue the journey. She forces a smile and tells him that she is completely fine, claiming it is just a minor spell of dizziness. But the terrifying reality is actually much worse. She has been completely unconscious for 4 entire days. And on top of that, horrifying dark lines have started spreading across her entire body. Realizing the extreme danger, the crew immediately decides to change their course. They desperately need to find the nearest inhabited island and get a skilled doctor to save her life. Luckily, the very first piece of land they encounter is the wintry Drum Island. But the moment Vivi sees the island, she becomes incredibly tense and nervous. She explains that her father, the King of Alabasta, has been locked in a bitter political conflict with the King of Drum Island for many years. So she strictly warns the crew that absolutely no one can discover her true identity, or the locals will completely refuse to help them. But there is a silver lining to this stressful situation. The island is world famous for having the most advanced medical technology and the greatest doctors in the world. However, the moment the crew arrives at the main gate, the heavily armed locals refuse to let them inside because they despise all pirates. Luffy instantly loses his temper and prepares to forcefully fight his way through the guards. But before he can throw a single punch, Vivi drops straight to her knees in the freezing snow and humbly begs the locals for their help. Seeing a literal princess swallow her pride, our hero finally realizes that some situations cannot be solved with violence. He follows her lead and respectfully bows his head, apologizing in his own unique way. Moved by their absolute desperation, the army commander finally agrees to let them enter the village. But he quickly reveals a massive, heartbreaking problem. The greedy king of the island abandoned his own people a long time ago, just to protect his own selfish interests. And when he left, he took absolutely every single doctor and all the medical supplies with him. Ultimately, the entire island has become completely abandoned without any medical supplies. And to make matters worse, there's only one single doctor left in the entire kingdom. But this doctor lives completely isolated in a house sitting at the very peak of a massive mountain, meaning there is absolutely no normal way to reach her. At that moment, Luffy simply cannot stand watching Nami suffer like this any longer, so he casually asks if she would mind getting on his back so they can climb the treacherous mountain together. And because she trusts him completely and without question, she immediately agrees to his crazy plan. Without wasting another second, Luffy and Sanji take Nami and begin their brutal ascent. And even though freezing snow is violently burying everything around them, they refuse to stop moving forward. But right in the middle of their terrifying climb, Sanji suddenly loses his balance and slips off the edge. Instantly, Luffy grips the frozen rock with one hand and violently stretches his other arm out to catch his friend before he falls. After enduring an unbelievable amount of suffering, they finally reach the top of the mountain. But the sheer exhaustion completely destroys Luffy, causing him to instantly lose consciousness and collapse. When Nami finally opens her eyes, she realizes she is feeling incredibly better. She looks down and sees an IV drip attached to her arm, but suddenly she spots a tiny creature that looks exactly like a small deer wandering around the room. The moment the creature realizes she is awake, it panics and quickly hides behind a pillar. It then nervously peeks half its head out and quietly asks if she is okay. Driven by pure curiosity, Nami asks the little creature if he was the one who treated her. But right at that moment, an old woman's sarcastic laughter echoes through the room. She steps closer to the bed and confidently introduces herself as Dr. Kureha. She proudly declares that she is the one who treated Nami and her reckless friends. She then explains that Nami's terrifying condition was caused by the bite of an incredibly rare, venomous insect that was actually supposed to be extinct a long time ago. Suddenly, Luffy comes sprinting into the room, screaming in pure panic. He yells at them to escape immediately because an evil witch trapped him in a pot of boiling water and is clearly planning to eat him for lunch. But Dr. Kureha furiously corrects his massive misunderstanding. She violently reminds him that she is a doctor, not an evil witch, and explains that she simply placed him in warm water to safely raise his freezing body temperature. Meanwhile, Sanji and Luffy are completely consumed by curiosity regarding the strange creature standing in front of them. They cannot understand how an animal is capable of talking exactly like a normal human, so they try to approach him to have a conversation. But the creature quickly backs away, looking absolutely terrified of them. Then, Luffy accidentally opens a nearby box and casually touches the old pirate flag resting inside. Instantly, the creature becomes violently angry, revealing his name is Chopper, and fiercely orders Luffy to stay away and never touch that flag again. Later, the crew gathers around Nami's bed once again. Luffy looks at Dr. Kureha and asks why the little monster got so incredibly furious just because he touched the flag in the box. So the doctor decides to reveal the heartbreaking truth behind his actions. She explains that Chopper carries a massive, agonizing wound in his heart from many years ago. He has lived his entire life in complete isolation, without a single family member or friend. And to make matters worse, he tragically lost the only person who ever truly cared for him. She takes them back in time, explaining how the tyrannical King Wapol launched a ruthless campaign against all doctors on the island. He ordered his soldiers to immediately arrest any doctor they found and drag them to his castle as hostages. And if anyone dared to resist, they were to be executed on the spot. Ultimately, only 2 doctors remained free in the entire kingdom, herself and a man named Dr. Hiraluk, because they were the only ones who managed to escape. In order to survive, the 2 doctors separated and ran in entirely different directions. During his escape, Hiraluk suddenly noticed a set of massive footprints stamped into the snow. But the strangest thing was that the footprints seemed to get smaller with every single step. It was also painfully obvious that whoever left them was severely injured and bleeding heavily, so he followed the bloody trail until it led him straight to a small monster suffering from a brutal gunshot wound. He slowly approached the creature, trying to help, and warned him that if he did not stop the bleeding immediately, he would die. But the little monster was completely terrified of humans and absolutely anyone who tried to get close to him. He violently resisted the doctor, refusing to let him help in any way, and no matter how much Hiraluk promised that he was unarmed and meant no harm, the creature fiercely rejected his assistance. He kept fighting back until he finally lost consciousness from the severe blood loss. A full day later, the creature finally wakes up inside a warm, safe cabin. He looks up and sees the exact same man who tried to help him the night before. The moment Hiraluk notices he is awake, he calmly says good morning, and without even thinking, the creature actually replies to the greeting. Instantly, Hiraluk realizes that this animal can speak exactly like a human being. Shocked, he asks the creature why he hid his voice earlier and gently encourages him to speak without fear. The little monster looks down and admits that the last time he tried talking to humans, they attacked him and shot him with a gun. Hiraluk sighs, explaining that cruelty has unfortunately been a core trait of humanity since the beginning of time. He then steps closer to examine the wound, and this time, the creature actually lets him help without fighting back. As he treats the injury, Hiraluk tells him that the wound is almost fully healed. He warmly adds that once he is completely recovered, he can safely return to his family. But the creature replies with a completely broken heart, confessing that he has no family left to return to. He explains that the entire reindeer herd disowned him and chased him away simply because he looked different. Hearing this, Hiraluk angrily blurts out that humanity is clearly not the only species with a cruel nature, as his own family seems to be leading the pack. But he quickly changes his tone, reassuring the little creature that he is not just a freakish outcast, but rather someone incredibly special. At that exact moment, a realization suddenly hits the doctor. He curiously asks the creature if he happened to eat a strange fruit known as a devil fruit. The little monster nods, confirming that he ate one simply because he was starving. We then finally understand that this magical fruit is the exact reason his appearance changed so drastically and turned him into a talking monster. After that, Hiraluk immediately prepares some food for him to eat. But he does not stop there. He actually invents a brand new name for the creature, calling him Chopper, which the little monster absolutely loves. From that day on, Chopper lived with the doctor for an entire year, using the excuse that he was waiting for his wound to fully heal. During that time, he helped Hiraluk around the clinic and eagerly learned the art of medicine. They became completely inseparable, acting as if fate had brought them together so they would never. We see Dr. Hiraluk making one desperate attempt after another to invent a medicine capable of saving the kingdom and curing any disease, but he completely fails every single time. And with every new attempt, his failure only becomes much worse than the last. Chopper watches him in absolute confusion and finally asks why he is doing all of this. He cannot understand why the doctor is trying so hard to save the exact same people who hurt them and shot at them for absolutely no reason. But Hiraluk calmly advises him to never let personal feelings interfere with healing the sick. He explains that the citizens are simply broken people who have completely lost all hope that things will ever get better. And when an entire nation loses hope, It is only natural for them to fight each other and fear absolutely everything, even if it poses no actual threat to them. He gently tells Chopper that their true mission as doctors is to completely restore that lost hope. He then begins to tell him about a breathtaking medical miracle known as the cherry blossoms. He explains that it is a beautiful mixture of medicine and raw emotion that he once witnessed in a faraway land. And he firmly believes that if he can spread that exact same miracle here, it will plant the seeds of hope once again and cure the people of all their diseases. He then walks straight over to his old pirate flag and proudly points at it. He passionately tells Chopper that this specific symbol means that absolutely nothing in this world is impossible. Then, he screams at the top of his lungs, completely overflowing with overwhelming enthusiasm. He boldly declares that he is the doctor who will finally save this broken kingdom. He firmly orders Chopper to raise the flag high, let it wave in the wind, and fight for his dreams exactly like a pirate. But the little reindeer is completely confused, having absolutely no idea what a pirate actually is. So Hiraluk sits down and tells him all about their incredible adventures across the open seas. He promises Chopper that if he ever tries living their lifestyle for just a single day, he will instantly forget every problem he has ever had. He then confidently predicts that Chopper is destined to live exactly like those pirates and sail the vast ocean. And he strongly urges the little monster to remember those exact words forever. But tragically, happy moments like these never seem to last. While they are walking back to the cabin, Hiraluk suddenly stops and casually announces that Chopper's wounds have fully healed. He tells him that his medical treatment is officially complete. At first, Chopper is thrilled and prepares to thank him for everything. But before he can even speak, Hiraluk coldly says goodbye, telling him to take care of himself. He bluntly states that Chopper is finally free and can leave the cabin immediately. At that exact moment, Chopper freezes in absolute shock. He simply cannot process how the doctor could just abandon him and force him to live completely alone once again. Desperate to stay, Chopper tries to fake an illness, pretending he is still in agonizing pain and has not fully recovered. But Hiraluk completely shatters his heart by stating that he is no longer obligated to care for him and that he needs to start looking out for himself. Chopper instantly breaks down, begging and pleading with the doctor to let him stay. He cries out that he has absolutely no friends and nowhere else in the world to go. But Hiraluk ruthlessly screams at him, fiercely ordering him to never return to the cabin. Then, he violently slams the heavy wooden door right in Chopper's face. A moment later, we see Hiraluk leaning against the other side of the door, violently sobbing. He tearfully begs Chopper to forgive him, crying that he had absolutely no other choice but to push him away, and we quickly learn the devastating reason behind his cruel actions. Hiraluk is actually on the verge of death. A terminal illness has completely taken over his body, and his time is rapidly running out. He simply could not allow Chopper to watch him slowly lose his life right in front of him, knowing it would cause the poor creature unimaginable trauma. Desperate for a little more time, Hiraluk visits Dr. Kureha and begs her to help him find a cure, but she bluntly tells him that it is completely impossible, confirming that he is already living his final days. She then sarcastically mocks him, telling him that if he truly believes in a magical cure, he should go find the miraculous mushroom he is always talking about. She reminds him of his own stories about the faraway land with the cherry blossoms and the legendary mushroom that can supposedly cure absolutely any disease. But unbeknownst to them, Chopper is secretly listening to their entire conversation from the shadows. And hearing this, he finally understands the agonizing truth behind the doctor's actions. However, Kureha remains completely unconvinced by the legend. She coldly states that even if such a crazy thing actually existed, it is absolutely impossible for anyone to travel to that deadly location and return alive. Hearing those terrifying words, the entire world goes pitch black in Chopper's eyes. Before leaving, Hiraluk makes one final heartbreaking request. He begs Kureha to take care of Chopper if anything happens to him, because the little reindeer has absolutely no one else in the world. Dr. Kureha then continues telling the story to the pirate crew. She explains that after Hiraluk realized his days were numbered, he began working like an absolute madman. He frantically mixed endless potions and formulas, desperately trying to find a cure for himself and the suffering people of the kingdom, until one fateful day, he finally manages to create a brilliant secret mixture. When the chemical reaction perfectly resembles the beautiful cherry blossoms, he is completely shocked to realize his experiment was a massive success. In a moment of pure, overwhelming joy, he completely forgets that he chased Chopper away. He excitedly calls out the little reindeer's name, desperately wanting to share this incredible victory with him. And suddenly, the cabin door slowly creaks open. Chopper walks inside looking like he just stepped out of a brutal war zone, bleeding heavily from countless terrifying wounds. But tightly gripped in his trembling hand is the legendary mushroom that can cure any disease. Hiraluk immediately rushes over to him, absolutely horrified that the little creature risked his own life just to save him. With tears in his eyes, Chopper looks up and says that he wants to become a doctor too. He proudly declares that Hiraluk will be his very first patient and begs the old man to teach him how to become a brilliant doctor just like him. Hiraluk stares at him in stunned silence for a few long moments. Then, he joyfully announces that Chopper will become the greatest doctor in history, simply because he possesses the most important qualification of all, a massive, caring heart. He pulls the bleeding reindeer into a tight, emotional hug, finally treating him exactly like the son he never had. After carefully bandaging all of Chopper's wounds, Hiraluk drinks the soup made from the miraculous mushroom. He then immediately starts packing his medical supplies. He tells Chopper that he must head straight to the king's castle to save his fellow doctors who are being held hostage. He explains that he received urgent news that the deadly illness has infected them, and they are on the verge of losing their lives. Before walking out the door, he smiles and tells Chopper that his health has already improved. He then proudly predicts one last time that the little reindeer will grow up to be the absolute best doctor in the entire kingdom. A short time later, Dr. Kureha bursts into the cabin, frantically looking for Hiraluk. Chopper innocently tells her that the doctor went to the castle to cure his colleagues because his health had finally improved. She looks at him in absolute shock and screams that Hiraluk's condition has no cure. But Chopper confidently smiles and tells her that is old news. He proudly explains that he personally traveled to the Deadly Mountains and brought back the famous mushroom that cures all diseases. He assures her that Hiraluk drank the mushroom soup and his health had completely recovered before he left. Have to be alone again. He excitedly opens a medical book and shows her a picture of the mushroom, pointing out that it even has a black pirate skull drawn right next to it. But Dr. Kureha immediately screams at him, furiously calling him an absolute idiot. She forcefully explains that the skull symbol does not mean it is a miracle cure. Instead, it means that the mushroom is highly toxic, and absolutely anyone who eats it will lose their life in less than a single hour. She then reveals the most heartbreaking truth of all. She tells him that Dr. Hiraluk knew perfectly well that the mushroom was a deadly poison. But despite knowing the lethal danger, he still smiled, took it from Chopper's hands, and drank the soup anyway. And he only did that because he loved the little reindeer so incredibly much and could not bear to break his heart after seeing how hard he fought to get it. Hearing those terrifying words, Chopper experiences the greatest shock of his entire life. He realizes with absolute horror that he just fed his only friend and mentor a deadly poison with his very own hands. But Kureha does not give him a single second to drown in self-pity. She fiercely yells at him, completely shattering his naive worldview. She firmly states that there is absolutely no such thing as a magical cure that can instantly heal diseases. So if he truly wants to save people's lives, he must sit down, study intensely, and actually learn the real science of medicine. Then she forces him to face the bitter reality. She bluntly tells him that Hiraluk is never coming back. The truth is, he intentionally marched straight toward the king's heavily guarded castle, fully expecting to lose his life right there. In that devastating moment, Chopper completely breaks down, collapsing into a fit of agonizing tears. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to Hiraluk as he storms the castle gates. He fearlessly throws explosive grenades at the royal guards, forcefully clearing a path to reach the top. He is absolutely determined to confront the king and free his fellow doctors, or at the very least, draw his final breath trying. Without a single ounce of fear, he bravely kicks open the doors and steps directly in front of the tyrannical King Wapol. He proudly declares that he has come to save the remaining doctors. But unfortunately, he quickly discovers a horrifying truth. The doctors are not actually being held hostage in the castle. It was all a cruel trap. Realizing he has won, Wapol ruthlessly orders his soldiers to completely eliminate the old man. But Hiraluk simply smiles and tells them not to bother wasting their ammunition. He calmly explains that his time is already up anyway. He looks directly at the king and boldly states, "You can erase me from this world, but my dream will live on forever." He confidently promises that one day all the sickness and despair will completely leave this kingdom. Those powerful words deeply affect Dalton, the captain of the guard, striking a chord in his conscience. But the king ignores the speech entirely and aggressively orders Dalton to finish the doctor off. However, right before anyone can make a move, Hiraluk delivers one final, desperate plea. He warns them that a monster will soon appear at the castle gates, and he fiercely begs them not to harm the creature, proudly declaring that the monster is his son and the rightful heir to his dream. At that exact moment, we see Chopper sprinting toward the castle at maximum speed, desperately hoping to save his mentor. But tragically, he is far too late. Hiraluk pulls out a hidden explosive, smiles one last time, and detonates it right in front of the royal army. Just as Chopper arrives at the gates, the deafening sound of the explosion violently shakes the ground. He looks up and finds Dalton standing right in front of him. Overwhelmed by grief and rage, Chopper instantly transforms into a massive, terrifying monster, completely ready to tear the captain apart. But surprisingly, Dalton drops his weapon and begs the creature to leave immediately. He tearfully pleads with Chopper not to throw his life away for absolutely nothing. He urges the little reindeer to go back home and truly live his life, swearing that if his father were still here, he would say the exact same thing. Hearing those deeply emotional words, Chopper slowly calms down and walks away from the castle in absolute sorrow. And because of the heartbreaking events of that night, Dalton finally finds the courage to defy the wicked king. He blatantly disobeys Wapple's direct orders and proudly announces his resignation from the royal guard. As for Chopper, he slowly walks all the way back to the snowy cabin. Along the entire journey, he endlessly repeats one single phrase to himself: he is going to become a doctor. When he finally arrives, he tearfully begs Dr. Kureha to teach him absolutely everything there is to know about the science of medicine. After she finishes telling this incredibly tragic backstory, the scene shifts back to the pirate crew. They are all deeply moved by Chopper's agonizing past, completely unable to imagine that such a tiny creature had survived so much pure heartbreak. Meanwhile, down at the bottom of the mountain, Zoro, Usopp, and Dalton are anxiously waiting for any news regarding Luffy and the rest of the crew. Since they have absolutely no way to reach the top, their only option is to stand in the freezing cold and wait. But suddenly, Dalton spots a thick pillar of black smoke rising in the distance. He immediately announces that he is going to investigate the situation himself. However, he strictly refuses to let Zoro come along with him. He looks at the swordsman and states that as long as the princess completely trusts him, he is forced to trust him as well. Hearing this, Zoro and Usopp are completely shocked that Dalton actually knows Vivi's true royal identity. Dalton quickly explains that he did not recognize her at first, but he eventually remembered meeting her a very long time ago at a royal gathering. He adds that she has not changed one bit, still effortlessly dazzling everyone around her with her sharp intelligence and striking beauty. So Zoro ultimately decides to stay behind and keep watch, while Dalton separates from the group and heads toward the mysterious smoke. Back at the castle on top of the mountain, Luffy casually opens the old wooden box and pulls out Hiraluk's dusty pirate flag. Instantly, Chopper rushes over, aggressively reminding Luffy that he specifically warned him never to touch it. But Luffy simply smiles and tells the little reindeer that a proud flag like this deserves to be flown high in the sky, not hidden away in the dark. So he forcefully stretches his rubber arm all the way up and proudly hangs the black flag at the very highest point of the castle. Chopper watches in absolute awe, completely mesmerized by Luffy's incredible stretching abilities. And in that exact moment, he finally realizes that Luffy has also eaten a devil fruit, just like him. Meanwhile, we see that Dalton has tragically walked straight into a brutal trap. His terrible luck leads him directly into an ambush set by King Wapple's returning soldiers, who quickly overpower and capture him. They drag the former captain away and throw him directly at Wapple's feet. The soldiers proudly announce that their king has finally returned to save his glorious kingdom. But Dalton fiercely glares at them and spits back that the only man who truly tried to save this kingdom blew himself up right in front of their eyes. He then boldly challenges Wapple directly, fearlessly pointing out that he is not a real king. He shouts that a true monarch would never cowardly abandon his own people in their darkest hour. Those insulting words completely infuriate the tyrannical ruler. In a terrifying display of power, Wapple reveals the true ability of his own devil fruit. He physically morphs his entire body into a massive walking weapon, sprouting heavy cannons and acting like a literal living armory. Dalton stares at the bizarre transformation and disgustedly calls him a monster, but Wapple simply laughs and mocks him, stating that he is certainly not the only monster in the room. And right on cue, Dalton triggers his own terrifying transformation. His physical size massively doubles as he shifts into a powerful half-animal form, confirming that he is also a devil fruit user. The two massive titans then stand face to face, completely ready to tear each other apart in a brutal showdown. But Dalton is not the only one facing extreme danger. We quickly see an army of heavily armed ironclad soldiers marching straight toward Zoro and Usopp's position. Suddenly, Vivi rushes over to them, breathlessly warning them that a massive new problem has just arrived on the island. She frantically explains that King Wapple has returned, and he is far stronger than before because he wields the deadly power of a devil fruit. She quickly looks around and asks where Dalton went. Zoro calmly replies that the former captain headed toward the castle a while ago and has not returned yet. Hearing this, they all immediately realize that the king's monstrous forces must have either captured him or worse. So Vivi quickly comes up with a desperate plan. She agrees to run up the mountain herself to retrieve Luffy, firmly ordering Zoro and Usopp to stay behind and protect the innocent villagers from the approaching army at all costs. After a massive struggle, Vivi finally manages to reach Zoro and Usopp. She quickly updates them on the latest terrifying news, so they immediately prepare to move out and escape the area. But Dr. Kureha decides to split from the group, bluntly stating that her own survival comes first. She leaves Chopper behind after he strictly refuses to go with her, insisting that he must stay to treat the wounded from the brutal war. A short while later, Wapol boldly marches right into their path. He mockingly welcomes Princess Vivi. But Luffy simply looks at him with complete indifference and asks her, "Who is this guy?" Hearing this, Wapol arrogantly introduces himself. He proudly declares that he is the rightful king, a pirate captain, and has come to reclaim his throne. But he quickly realizes that Luffy is not paying any attention to him at all. Instead, our hero is casually doing stretching exercises. Luffy calmly tells the tyrant that based on his arrogant words, it is pretty obvious they are about to fight. And the truth is, the disrespect is completely mutual. Wapol sneers at Luffy and mockingly asks, "Fight you? I eat 10 punks like you for breakfast like salty biscuits." But Vivi suddenly steps right in front of Luffy. She firmly asks him not to interfere and to leave the tyrant entirely to her. She boldly walks straight up to Wapol. She fiercely tells him that true power is not just a shiny crown he gets to show off. She proudly shows him exactly who she is and what royal blood truly means. Then she ruthlessly backhands him right across the face. Furious, Wapol instantly transforms his arm into a massive razor-sharp weapon. He prepares to slice her into tiny pieces. But in the blink of an eye, Luffy violently pulls her aside to safety. He enthusiastically praises her incredible speech, and then he confidently announces that it is finally his turn to step up. At that exact moment, down at the battlefield, Zoro and Usopp believe they are facing this massive war entirely alone. But suddenly, the remaining citizens of the kingdom march out and join their ranks. We learn that Wapol had ruthlessly eaten half of their people and transformed them into mindless monsters forced to serve him. So the entire village stands together, completely ready to fight those terrifying beasts. An endless wave of bizarre monsters charges straight at them. Zoro calmly draws 2 of his swords, and the fierce battle instantly erupts with explosive energy. Meanwhile, Sanji rushes in to help Nami escape the area as fast as possible. But Chopper firmly blocks his path. He aggressively explains that she is still incredibly weak and desperately needs medical care. Chopper loses his temper, and in a flash of anger, he transforms into his massive monster form right in front of them. Right on cue, Wapol's elite soldiers storm into the room. The moment they spot the giant creature, they draw their weapons and prepare to kill him. We realize they actually came here hunting for Dr. Kureha, since she is the very last doctor left in the entire kingdom. So Chopper and Sanji stand side by side and launch a brutal counterattack. Just outside the room, Luffy officially begins his explosive one-on-one battle against Wapol. Back down at the castle battlefield, the monstrous soldiers have completely destroyed the entire area. Usopp panics, feeling that the battle is rapidly slipping completely out of their favor. He frantically yells at Zoro, asking what their next move should be. But right at that moment, Dalton violently charges into the fray in his terrifying half-beast form. He immediately joins their ranks and launches a devastating assault on the enemy monsters. Usopp stares at the chaotic scene in absolute disbelief. He hilariously screams, "Did absolutely everyone on this island eat a devil fruit?" But right before a massive beast can crush Usopp, Dr. Kureha makes a shocking entrance. She leaps directly into the battlefield and flawlessly saves his life. And without breaking a sweat, the old doctor ruthlessly finishes off the remaining enemy monsters. Back inside the castle, we see Sanji perfectly teaming up with Chopper. The cook spins rapidly, executing a powerful fan-like kicking motion. Chopper instantly understands the strategy. The reindeer grabs a struggling soldier and violently throws him directly into Sanji's line of fire. Sanji delivers a devastating kick that launches the enemy completely out of sight, instantly breaking his neck upon impact. The 2 fighters proudly celebrate their flawless teamwork and legendary combo move. The scene then shifts back to Wapol, who is incredibly still breathing. He struggles to his feet and screams that he is going to blow every single one of them to pieces. He points his massive cannon straight up and threatens to start by destroying Hiruluk's pirate flag flying high above the castle. Chopper screams in pure terror, but Luffy instantly launches himself through the air directly toward the flag, using his own body as a living shield. Everyone watches in absolute horror, completely terrified that he just sacrificed his life. Wapol bursts into arrogant laughter, mocking Luffy for throwing his life away over a stupid piece of cloth. But suddenly, Luffy's powerful voice echoes through the smoke. He fiercely warns the tyrant to never dare touch that flag again. And as the dust clears, everyone is completely shocked to see Luffy standing there without a single scratch on him. In that breathtaking moment, Chopper's heart swells with overwhelming pride. He instantly looks up to Luffy as his ultimate role model, right alongside his beloved mentor. Luffy then resumes his brutal assault on Wapol, mercilessly thrashing the tyrant left and right. Watching the absolute spectacle, Chopper shouts at the top of his lungs, "This is exactly what a true pirate should be." And Nami proudly replies with a smile, "There is absolutely no pirate in the world like Luffy." At that exact moment, Sanji calls out to Luffy, declaring that it is time to execute their ultimate finishing move. Sanji raises his powerful legs, and Luffy firmly grabs onto them with both of his rubbery hands. With a massive burst of combined force, Luffy is launched forward exactly like a high-speed rocket. He slams directly into Wapol, violently blasting the tyrant completely off the top of the mountain and sending him flying into the unforgiving wind. Following the king's humiliating defeat, his monstrous soldiers are completely crushed one after another. The defeated beasts miraculously transform back into normal human beings. Terrified and broken, they completely surrender to Zoro. And with that final victory, Luffy and his incredible crew successfully save the entire kingdom. Afterwards, Dr. Kureha rushes into the castle and finally frees her fellow doctors who had been held hostage. Later that night, the entire crew gathers together in a warm room. They happily check on Nami, whose health has significantly improved, allowing her to finally stand on her own 2 feet. Dalton and Dr. Kureha watch the crew, completely amazed that a young goofy kid like Luffy managed to utterly defeat Wapol and free the people from his wicked evil. But Luffy casually informs them that he did not do it entirely alone. He proudly points out that Sanji and Chopper completely destroyed the king's elite aides. Hearing this, Dalton and Kureha are overwhelmed with curiosity about this mysterious Chopper. They look straight ahead at normal eye level, expecting to see a fearsome warrior. But to their absolute shock, they find him barely visible to the naked eye. The tiny creature standing in front of them is so incredibly small that he does not even exceed 2 centimeters in height. But Dalton instantly recognizes the tiny creature. He knows immediately that this is Dr. Hiriluk's beloved son. He then walks straight over to Luffy and drops down to his knees in absolute gratitude. He deeply thanks Luffy and the entire pirate crew for fighting the terrifying oppression they have suffered under for so many years. Then he bids them an emotional farewell, explaining that he must stay behind because this broken kingdom desperately needs a new leader to guide them. Afterwards, Luffy calls out to Chopper with a massive smile. He completely demands that the little reindeer join their crew and finally experience the incredible life of a pirate, but Chopper hesitantly refuses. So the crew quickly reminds him that they desperately need a brilliant doctor just like him, especially since he just saved Nami's life. Hearing this, Chopper tearfully thanks them for treating him with such overwhelming kindness and humanity. He cries that not a single one of them ever made him feel like a freak, but he sadly explains that he is not a human being like them. He believes he can never truly be one of them or be accepted in their world. But Luffy completely cuts off this dramatic speech. He screams at the top of his lungs, fiercely ordering Chopper to just shut up and come with them already. And faced with Luffy's absolute crazy determination, Chopper finally bursts into happy tears. For the second time in his tragic life, he truly feels wanted by people he loves. So he wipes his tears and tells them he just has one tiny piece of business to take care of before he leaves. He runs straight back to Dr. Kureha and boldly announces his final decision. He tells her that he is leaving the island to sail the world and live out a grand pirate adventure. At first, she angrily guilt-trips him, reminding him of absolutely everything she has done to raise him, but Chopper firmly admits that he will never forget her incredible kindness. However, he fiercely declares that it is finally time for him to chase his own dreams. He tells her that his decision is absolute, and he turns his back to walk away. After leaving the castle, he disappears for a short while to prepare a massive surprise for his new crew. He suddenly returns, pulling a beautiful sleigh, looking exactly like Santa Claus. But this time, he is the only magical reindeer needed to pull it, and to make their grand escape even more spectacular, Luffy uses his rubber abilities to help. He stretches his arms out to create a massive slingshot, forcefully launching the sleigh completely off the snowy mountain and sending them flying through the freezing air. They finally crash land safely right onto the deck of their ship. And even though Chopper is absolutely thrilled to stand on a real pirate ship for the very first time, his heart still aches. He realizes how incredibly hard it is to actually leave his homeland behind. But Usopp quickly steps up to comfort him. The sniper warmly smiles and tells him that he knows that exact painful feeling all too well. He then reassures Chopper that from this moment on, this ship is his true home, and this crew is his real family. Suddenly, Chopper panics, realizing that he completely forgot to bring his essential medical bag, but Nami calmly hands it right to him. She reveals that Dr. Kureha actually packed it for him herself, knowing the entire time that he was destined to leave and follow his dreams. Back at the snowy peak, we see Dr. Kureha standing proudly in the freezing cold. She is tightly holding the secret chemical mixture of the cherry blossoms that Hiriluk sacrificed his life to create. She quietly tells Dalton that it is a profound tragedy that the old doctor never got to see if his life's work actually succeeded. Then, she loads the glowing mixture directly into the massive castle cannons. She lights the fuse and fires the brilliant chemicals straight into the dark winter sky. Suddenly, the entire island looks up in absolute awe. The sky explodes with a breathtaking pink light, making the falling snow look exactly like blooming cherry blossoms. Everyone on the island instantly feels an overwhelming wave of hope and pure happiness wash over them. Down on the ship, Chopper watches the miraculous glowing sky and bursts into heavy tears. He cries because he desperately wishes his beloved mentor could have been standing right there beside him to witness his magnificent dream finally come true. The very next day, the entire crew throws a massive, joyful party to officially celebrate Chopper joining their pirate family. During the celebration, Vivi quietly talks to Nami. Looking deeply emotional, she confesses that she is going to miss this incredible atmosphere and will deeply miss having all of them in her life. But Luffy overhears her sad words and casually asks where she is planning to go. So she explains the harsh reality of their situation. She tells him that once they finally reach the kingdom of Alabasta, they will have to go their separate ways. She has to stay behind to save her dying country, while they must continue their grand voyage to find the legendary One Piece treasure. But Luffy immediately stops her right there. He firmly tells her that finding the treasure is definitely the ultimate plan, but he fiercely declares that they are absolutely not leaving until they help her win her kingdom back. Vivi is completely shocked by his words. She simply cannot believe that this pirate crew is willing to risk absolutely everything just to fight for her country. But the entire crew warmly reassures her that she is already a true member of their family. And because of that, her war is officially their war too. Hearing their absolute loyalty, Vivi wipes her tears and issues a serious warning. She tells them that if they are truly going to fight a massive war against the Baroque Works organization, they need to know exactly who they are dealing with so they can prepare for the absolute worst. At that exact same moment, the scene shifts to reveal a terrifying new enemy. We finally see the face of Sir Crocodile, one of the most dangerous and highly wanted pirates in the entire world, and we shockingly learn that he is the true mastermind and supreme leader of the secret organization they have been fighting this entire time. He is ruthlessly planning to completely annihilate the kingdom of Alabasta, and once the kingdom is entirely reduced to ashes, he plans to focus all his devastating power on claiming the One Piece treasure for himself. So the ultimate question remains, who will be the first to reach the legendary treasure? And we will finally discover the epic answer in the events of the next incredible season.